means we're human.
It does. We are human. Good morning.
Morning.
How are you doing?
All right, you?
Yeah, all good. All good. So we want to talk about the charity a little bit.
Mhm.
Charity that the charity that you founded, I think 14 years ago.
Yep.
Long time now.
Too long.
How does it feel that knowing that you've founded a charity that's supported thousands of people? I mean, I wouldn't like to guess how many thousands of people have been touched by the charity, but it's got to be a significant number.
Definitely. And I think the thing is, it's like you say, it's not just necessarily the people you see face to face, it's that wider part of it. So, you say you're a dad and you've come for counselling and support, and that's improved your life, then that naturally will improve your children's lives or your wife's lives or your partner's lives or whatever your circumstances are. So yeah, it touches on a lot of people. And I suppose, like, you go to a school and you might see 500 kids in one school year, and then what they've learned they're going to pass on to their family, and it goes on and on and on.
It does. You're absolutely right. And I think one of the things, I've been involved with the charity now for, I think, 5-6 years, something like that. Maybe it's 7 years. I can't remember if it's 2018 or 2019. But one of the things that you and everyone in the charity always used to say is we're a charity that provides therapeutic services. And I still don't know what that means, which I think is quite funny, really, because when people ask me what the charity does, I say it's a mental health counselling charity, and we provide counselling and we provide coffee and chats, and we do our drumming circles, and we do other types of community initiatives. But what does therapeutic services mean?
Well, and I suppose that's we are a mental health charity. That's what we come under the Charities Commission, as a mental health charity. And it comes under health as well. So health and well-being, I believe. But therapy is something where something changes. So to be a therapist as such, you're helping somebody instigate change.
Okay.
So there's an identification that there's something needs to change. So that's generally the first thing that happens. Somebody recognizes that something isn't quite right, either in their life or in the lives of somebody else, or it can be anything, and that actually then a change needs to be instigated. Now, a therapist would introduce some form of change. A counsellor allows the environment for the client or the individual to actually work out for themselves, with the help of their counsellor, what changes they need to make and how they're going to do it.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it does make sense.
And I think one of the things that people get it very confused, a psychotherapist is exactly the same as a counsellor. They create an environment in which it creates an opportunity for somebody to change. A physiotherapist actually will give you exercises to do. Now, when I work with people on a very different, I'm quite proactive in my work and how I work with people. So like when I mentor people and it is about, there's a beginning, there's a middle, there's an end. There's a project, we need to work towards what we want, what that person wants as a goal, and how do we get there? And we sit down together as a collective and work out a solution and a plan. When I'm working as a counsellor, it's very similar, but it's about, well, what do you want to achieve from your counselling? Okay. What do you feel you need to change in your counselling? And timescales, plans. And I then might introduce some education. But I always make sure that that's very, very clearly stated. I'm now going to do some education. And that might be introducing a book, introducing a worksheet. It might be asking somebody to go investigate something. It might be actually just asking somebody to do nothing. Okay. But it's an intervention, if you see what I'm saying. So I suppose in a sense, that's that bit where there's an action with therapy, whereas with counselling as such, there shouldn't be somebody directing you.
Right, I see. That sort of makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
And I think anyone that's listening that's not had counselling or wondering what counselling really is, I guess that's a really good explanation of what it is.
But also the thing about a counselling relationship, it's it should be very safe. So it's a private, confidential relationship. And you can't have a successful counselling if you don't have a good relationship with your counsellor. And the relationship doesn't mean about going and having a cup of coffee and a cup of tea and cream cake. It's about being able to communicate on a truthful way And sometimes you're not ready to tell them everything. You don't need to. You tell them what you're ready to tell them at the time. But also the counsellor, to be able to have good listening skills, to be able to engage with that person in a level that is a mutual relationship, so that there's an equality around that, but also recognizing you're not there as a counsellor to resolve the problem, you're there to create the environment. But also the client can't rely on the counsellor to resolve the problem. They have to realize that they are an adult or a child, a young person, whatever, and it's for them to solve the problem, not for us to solve the problem, if that makes sense. And counselling is a very unique and privileged position to be in. Anybody that is a counsellor, in my opinion, and it's only my opinion, need to respect the fact that they're in a very privileged position. Lots of people don't always do that. And it's about keeping that safe. So it's confidential. It is only confidential, though, unless there's a risk. If there's a risk involved, if the counsellor feels that that person is at risk and there's a safeguarding issue, they have a duty of care to report that to the relevant parties. So it would be to somebody's GP. It may be to the police if it's felt that that person's at risk to the general public or something like that. If somebody disclosed that they were planning on robbing a bank, putting your little balaclava on and going out there, you have a professional responsibility to report that. If there's any child abuse happening, current child abuse that may have happened historically and the abuser is still around, you might need to report that too, if the person doesn't feel ready to do it themselves. So you may have to advocate on behalf of that person. It's a really lovely job to have. I've loved my job. I've been in my job for, I can't remember how many years. And it's a great position to be in. And I've met some amazing people. And some people that have worked with me don't get on with me and then decided they didn't want to work with me, and that's fine. You don't get on with everybody. It's called the real world.
No, of course. And like you said, having the right counsellor, the right person that you sort of gel with to discuss some of these things is really important. And I guess from your perspective as a counsellor, you will hear some awful things, some traumatic things. So how do you ensure that, you're looked after?
Well, every counsellor that works should have at least an hour and a half supervision. So that's what supervision is it's a bit like having your own counselling, but the person that you're talking to is like your mentor, really, the person that will direct you, the person that will listen to you, that will guide you through your case notes. Your clients, they will help you if they feel there's some spillovers and stuff like that. And it gives you that opportunity to share if something has touched you emotionally. But there's another side to that. You have to look after yourself. So you can't just think you're going to go out there and conquer the world and save everybody's lives. You're not going to do that anyway. To be able to certainly do our job, you need to be self-caring a lot. So if things are not going well for you, you need to make sure that you're in counselling yourself. You can still do your job, but actually you need to make sure that you've had counselling. I feel that every counsellor should have counselling before they become a counsellor of some kind. Because I think you need to know what it feels like to sit opposite somebody and divulge your most personal secrets.
Of course, yeah.
It's quite a brave thing to do. But also, and what I do is if I've had a really heavy kind of bit of work, I go for a walk, I listen to music, I read a book, I'll go and play with my horse. I have a routine. When I used to work in the mental health services, so I would do a full day in the services, go home, pick the children up from school and carry on in private clinic. My drive home was my kind of let down. I could relax and then start again later on. That's what I did.
Yeah. It must be really hard sometimes to kind of have that breakaway. Yeah. But obviously with your experience, that's something you learn. And I imagine that's a big piece of some of the training that counsellors go through is how they kind of detach themselves from some of these things.
I don't know that it is. No? I mean, it's a bit like note taking. Not many people are giving training on how to write notes, but notes are so vitally important in any setting because it's the evidence of what's occurred within that room. And also if something goes wrong, then if an investigation has to take place, then it's there. The evidence is there. The clients agree the notes. I'm very open about notes and feel that everybody should be. You should be sharing those notes with your clients so there's no secrets. And if there's anything that you're concerned about, you can raise that with your client rather than it being written in a note secretly. But so I feel quite strongly about that. I think when I worked, it depends how, I'm kind of dodging around the question here, but yeah, there's some days when you just want to cry. There's some days when, you lose a client, they die, they commit suicide, the list is endless. What can happen? We're dealing with human beings and it's really tragic. And you have to, I remember the first client of mine that died, I just constantly sat there thinking, what could I have done differently? Have I done anything? Should I have done this? Should I have done that? And I had a fantastic supervisor at the time who said, look, let's look at this. Whose responsibilities, when somebody takes their own life, whose responsibility is it? They've made that choice. And that's the thing, is about understanding that you are only in that person's life for, say, an hour a week, and the other 7 days, they're with everybody else around them.
Yeah, exactly. But I guess also you've got the flip side of, I imagine you've had some really good outcomes, really good stories where you look at people and go, wow, look how well they've done.
Oh yeah, and some of those people are still in my life, which is, I see them, do you know what I'm saying? And it's a celebration, and I love that. And I think, and that's in all the aspects of my work. I'm not just a charity, but in my work, because I do so much varied work. So I do mentoring, I do, what's it called when you, life coaching. And all of that stuff, as well as counselling, as well as lots of other things. Seeing the people that have changed, and you've been part of that, is just wonderful. Kids being born, people getting married, it's just all miracles. Yeah. They are all miracles, and I'm privileged to kind of witness that. And I think our counsellors in the charity are. This morning, a beautiful bit of feedback came through from a client, and whilst it's given to the counsellor, without what you and I have done, that wouldn't have happened.
No, of course.
It just wouldn't. And yesterday I spoke to a lovely lady who I just needed to clarify something on her referral. And we ended up chatting for like 10 minutes, and it was really lovely. And, you build relationships with people, and you realize that actually everybody's normal out there. They have their own normal, and actually they have a wife, kids, husband, whatever your circumstances are. And that actually, if you can just help one person in your life, you're saving somebody's life. That's such a privilege, such a privilege. And I've been fortunate to have done that for many years and been reasonably successful at it. Or I like to think I have been.
I think you've been very successful. You've recently been awarded your British Empire
gosh,
Medal.
I forgot about that one.
For the services that you have done for however long you've been in practice for, charity work and things like that. It's all been proven, I suppose, is a good way of putting it.
Yeah, I suppose, and that's the thing with like that, those kind of awards, and it's like it's recognition for all of the work that people do in mental health. It's not just for me. And yes, okay, it was given to me, and yes, you're right, I've done a lot of good work in my career and still continue to do that, but people don't see that. It's all the stuff in the background, isn't it?
That's it, exactly. And I think one of the key things is that the charity receives referrals from all kinds of places. We receive them from GPs, people self-refer. We have referrals from the mental health services, from schools, colleges, teachers, you name it. That's where we receive referrals from. And I think sometimes it's forgotten that it's charities like ours that are out there in the community kind of almost picking up the pieces or pulling those strings to kind of make things happen for people. There's lots of statutory services out there which perhaps don't receive enough funding to support their clients. And it's charities and our funders and our grant providers that allow us to pick up those pieces and help the many people that we do.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think there's a frustration there as well, because we are effectively doing the work that people would expect, like you say, the statutory services to do, that get given lots of money. They do. I'm sorry, I know people say they're under budgeted, but there is money out there, and we very rarely get a look in, and it's really hard work, and it's quite stressful trying to accumulate enough money to keep going. And that's year in, year out. There's no magic wand here. We have to raise the money. People don't realise how much work you do. We were just doing our final report, weren't we? And it's for the year, and it's like, wow, I think it worked out to be 43,000 can't remember, was it about 43,625 one-to-one sessions?
Yeah, something
in our last
like
financial year. I mean, that is wow.
It's a huge number, and I think if you were looking at what that would cost if it was being done in statutory services, it would be significantly, phenomenally more money, more expensive than the charity is able to do it for, because of the generosity of some of the volunteers that work with the charity, with the trustees, even the counsellors. The counsellors are paid, but also they're not paid, normal rates. They're discounted effectively, and I think it just is testament to that we're able to help so many people.
Yeah, I agree with you, and the I 100%. I can't even say anything about that. It's just like but I find it is hard work. I feel like I spend more time now doing work for the charity than I do for my own business, which is okay. It's okay. I've got a great team behind me at work, so I don't need to be there as much as I used to be there. But there does come a point when you go, when do I step out?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I was on my drive here this morning to come and do our podcast recording day. I was thinking about how many hours I spent on the charity this week already. And we spent about 3 hours on Monday night, maybe 4 hours on Monday night doing our trustees meeting. Yesterday I did some podcast editing and got the podcast out yesterday. Today we've got podcast recording. Yesterday we also did I did the annual report writing, the accountant, pulling all together all of that. Sort of I sit there sometimes and it's a bit like and you've got something in the corner staring at you, and I'm thinking my other businesses are sat there going, when are you going to work on me?
But that's it, isn't it? That that's the thing. But I suppose we are a very small group of trustees.
Yeah,
there's only 4 of us. We do when you consider what we achieve on 4 of us.
Yeah, I think we should also point out that out of the 4 trustees, there's only one white male, who's myself.
Yes.
We are women led, which is a bit unique, I think.
We are women led. Yeah, I never thought about that. I did apply for a grant for women led, but we didn't get that one. We do, my head's going about a million things now. We have just got somebody who's interested, who's from a completely different background, and there's another man.
Yeah,
you'll be pleased to hear. But I just feel when we're not the only charity that's in this position.
No, that is very true, and we do everything on a shoestring. We do really well on a shoestring. To support as many people as possible. We've had to make some tough decisions this year, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah.
We've had to restrict the number of free counselling hours we're able to offer each individual client because of funding. Funding isn't as widely available, but the demand is still there.
Oh gosh,
demand is growing, and the number of clients we've seen this year, unique clients, is significantly up from previous years. However, the number of clients we see on an average week is slightly down as a result. But if we had unlimited funding, I think we would be seeing thousands of clients.
Absolutely.
It's purely a limitation on funding.
Do you know, one of the hardest things that I find, because all the new inquiries that come in, I go through each one just to make sure that we've got enough information to be able to put them straight on the wait list. And there's a couple on the wait list. There's 3 on the wait list at the moment. 2 of them that are out of area, and in fact, there's 3 that's out of area. And I hate saying no. I absolutely hate saying, I'm sorry, but at this moment in time, you're not in our area and we can't support you. If there is a vacancy and haven't got enough clients in our area, I will put you on the wait list. But I hate doing that. I feel awful doing that. But it's a fact. We can only just manage the people in Sedgemoor and the random people that we get occasionally that we can sneak in the back door out of area. We have quite a strict criteria that we follow, and we have to, because otherwise we wouldn't be solvent.
Well, and this is the important thing, isn't it? And if we were to accept everybody that made an inquiry or was referred or referred themselves, we would never be able to see all the people that we do see.
Last week, sorry, just to interrupt, last week we had 15 referrals.
Yeah.
15 referrals. I mean, that is a lot of, that's probably more than most services would get. And all but 2 went on the wait list.
Yeah.
And they've all been processed. They are now waiting for a counsellor to have an availability.
I think that's something that we're quite proud of, is that our wait list is quite well managed.
Yeah.
There's not a huge long wait for seeing somebody. And I think that's really good, because there's lots of statutory services where it could be 6 or 9 months, if not longer.
Oh, yeah.
Before you're able to see somebody.
But saying that, one of the things that I find incredibly frustrating, and I don't know how you feel about this, is that people book an assessment, and I can see it on the system. I can see that they've spoken to the counsellor, they've booked their assessment, they're going to do this face-to-face assessment, and we don't include that in their 12 weeks. We're kind enough not to do that, their 12 sessions. So they book their assessment, and then they don't turn up.
Yeah, that is frustrating.
And that's, we've got to pay somebody. We've got them on the system. That's taken me 2 or 3 hours by the time I've sorted everything out, plus the counsellor's time, plus, it goes on and on and on. And people just don't recognise it. And I just think it's so rude. Just pick up the phone and say you're not going to make it.
Exactly. No, I agree with you. It is a real shame. And they're kind of taking away space from
for somebody else
who does really want to be seen, to see a counsellor or whatever. No, it's a really important point to make.
And the other thing is, we have a policy that if you miss 2 sessions, then we discharge you. And you can self-refer back. But my feelings are, if you've been discharged because you haven't bothered to turn up for your sessions, why would it be okay for you to come back, if that makes sense? And some people go, I'm so desperate, and then don't turn up.
Yes, it's not good. Luckily, that doesn't happen that
often.
Oh,
gosh. Well,
really
it probably happens at least 2 a week.
Oh, really? I didn't realise it was quite that high.
There's 2 a week. Okay. And it's, we've said you either confirm your appointment, and if you don't confirm your appointment, then it's not going to occur. Even though most people have confirmed their appointment beforehand, verbally. It's just so frustrating. And you think the amount of money that's wasted, because we still have to pay the counsellors. It would be disrespectful not to pay them.
For sure.
That's what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
But, yeah, it is what it is, isn't it? But yeah.
Well, I think that's a really good overview of what counselling is, what the charity does. Thanks very much.
We do have a wider part of the charity, which you touched on, and I kind of haven't really.
And I was thinking of doing that in our next episode.
Okay, pick it up then.
We will.